I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hinojosa, who is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and chairman of the Higher Education Committee.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 63. The state of Texas has a proud history of military service. Thousands of Texans have fought with distinction in every conflict this country has entered. Hundreds of my constituents are currently serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are willing to leave behind their family and friends to risk their lives in service to their country. Many will never return home. Many will come home maimed and injured. I want to read the names of the young people from the 15th District of Texas who have given their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Daryl Shipp, Benito Ramirez, Javier Marin, Julio Alvarez, Gary Moore, Tomas Garces, Mark Anthony Zapata, Juan Calderon, Christopher Ramirez, Dustin Sekula, Juan Garza, James Kissinger, Michelle Mutz, John Russell, Kenton Gertzen, Christopher Kilpatrick, Tina Priest, and Daniel Galvan. I know how much their families and friends have grieved at their loss. I have spoken to their parents and spouses and have attended many of their funerals. We are all so very proud of their military service and know they did their very best. However, as an elected representative of the United States government, I have a responsibility to make sure that the sacrifices of these brave men and women were not in vain. I have a responsibility to see that more Americans will not be sacrificed unnecessarily. I have supported the funding to give our military the body armor, the equipment and training they need, and I will continue to see that they have whatever they need. But I will not support an administration policy that puts more troops in harm's way with no apparent end in sight and with no clear goals on how to win the fight. In 2002, I stood in this well and I spoke on that resolution giving the president permission to go to war. And I voted against going to war with Iraq because I didn't believe we had all the information we needed on Iraq's nuclear capabilities and weapons of mass destruction and its support for terrorism. I was concerned that the president had not convinced the 39 countries who had supported us in the previous war with Iraq. I was disappointed that the president did not have an exit plan after we defeated Iraq. And I was disappointed that the president would not put in the budget what we were going to spend on that war. No one denies that Saddam Hussein was a cruel dictator who brutally oppressed his people, and I am glad that the Iraqis are free of this tyranny. But the Bush administration did not have accurate information then, and I don't believe they have an accurate picture of the situation today. Our troops are now caught in the middle of a civil war between religious groups that have hated each other for centuries. There is no defined enemy and no clear battle lines. The task of imposing and growing democracy in a place where it has never been is not the job of our military. It must come from the political will of the Iraqi people. Only the Iraqis can decide whether they want to put aside centuries of discord and come together to create a stable, democratic country where the rights of every group is recognized. The Iraqi government must take responsibility for its own future. After more than 4 years, the U.S. is not safer because of our efforts in Iraq, By dividing our resources, we have allowed the Taliban to re-emerge in Afghanistan and have given Al-Qaeda a strong foothold that it never had before in Iraq. Syria and Iran have gained influence throughout the entire region. We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars at the expense of critical programs at home like education, health care, and homeland security.
Gentleman's
May I have
time has expired.
one additional minute?
You get an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars at the expense of critical programs like education, health, and homeland security. Our military is severely strained with troops on their third and fourth tours of Iraq. Units are being deployed either understaffed or with new personnel that has decreased unit cohesiveness, proficiency, and morale. Equipment is worn out, and our readiness to deal with an additional crisis is in jeopardy. Unfortunately, most of his generals disagree. The distinguished members of the bipartisan Iraq study group disagree, and more importantly, the American people disagree. I hope my colleagues will join me in supporting this H.R. 63 resolution and opposing the President's decision to send more troops to Iraq.